Welcome to GorillaCast, the podcast where we expose the naked truth of building startups and the lessons no one wants to tell you. Today, I'm here with Sampo Parkkinen. Sampo is a serial entrepreneur, currently founder of Revieve and a venture partner at Gorilla Capital. Welcome to the studio, Sampo.
Thanks, Ami. Great to be here.
Yeah, so Sampo, starting with you and your path to entrepreneurship, where did it all start?
Well, I mean, gosh, it started a while ago. I think almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And to be honest, I didn't plan to be an entrepreneur. I think it was an accident. So I remember I was in university, and one of my buddies at university came to me one day and he said he's building together a business team. And I was kind of like, well, I've got nothing better to do, so why not? And that's the path I've been on for the last 20 years. Turned out to be a pretty decent decision in the end.
So I want to start off with our previous episode's guest, Risto's question to you, Sampo.
I'm dreading this already. This is going to be painful.
Yeah. So what's the single most important thing an early stage founder should focus on?
Well, if we think about early stage as pre-product market fit, I would say there is only one thing, and that is your customers, and particularly learning about your customers. There is really nothing else. So if you ask me one thing, that's the thing.
It's not easy to learn about your customers and really to be focused on that. What are some of the things that you've seen along the way that make it possible for you to learn?
Well, I think everybody starts from assumptions, right? Like, you figure out there's this problem I want to solve as an entrepreneur. There's this thing I want to create in the world. There's this product I want to build. Like, wouldn't it be cool if this thing existed? And you start out with a set of assumptions. And that's where everybody starts out. And the reason why kind of learning and understanding specifically about your customers is really challenging is because it requires a couple of things. It requires, humility. It requires you to be humble and you to kind of also point out to yourself, I don't know all the things that I thought I did. And it also requires you to kind of break down those assumptions. So like you said, I think there's a place for this in the world. Well, guess what? I would say that every startup founder who's ever been successful have started with some set of assumptions, and they've never ended up with the same set of assumptions. So what you end up changes. And I think that's painful because you have this thing in your head where it's like, I believe in this. And when you hear something from a customer or a prospect or somebody in your target audience, and that contradicts what you think, it's a hard pill to swallow. It's reality, but it's still hard.
Very true. When you go on that learning path, when you try to listen to your customers, when you're trying to get there, how do you know that you're learning the right things?
Well, you don't. And that's why not everybody reaches product market fit. So you don't. I think what you have to learn about what your customers tell you, but also what they do, because those are two different things. Right? Those can be two different things. Like somebody will tell you, it's like, oh, if you had this feature, I would buy it. Great. Well, sign up. Why don't you sign up for early access? Like, we're going to build this. It's going to be ready in a month. And, once it's ready, you give me 50,000 euros for it. That's the difference between somebody saying something and then them actually doing it. So I think, I think that is at the core. But I also think that, it's the other thing that's sort of quite challenging with learning and learning particularly about your customers is that it's something that you can't outsource. Like, there's a lot of things when you're building a startup that you don't have to care about. You can outsource, but you can't outsource learning. Mm-hmm. There's no magic CRO or there's no MBA or online course there's you as a founder. And you've got to do it. Unless you don't, nobody else is going to figure it out for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think we see nowadays a lot of even early stage companies trying to outsource some of the functions, trying to do market studies, getting some external validation for their thinking. But in essence, your message is that you need to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
It's not something you can give for someone else to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, if you want to do a market study and show it to a bunch of investors and they're like, "Oh, this is great. There's a market for it. Gartner says it's right over here. It's going to be, several $1 trillion in 5 years." Like that's all fine and good, but it's not going to help you as a founder reach product market fit. Because it is not something that you can outsource. Nobody else can go in front of your customers, ask the questions, because you don't even know which questions you're going to end up asking. Like once you're having this type of a conversation, and I think Risto made a point earlier in the earlier episode about, you have to be able to get into the room to actually ask the questions. But once you do, like they give you an answer and you're like, well, why do you do that? Hold on, but shouldn't you be doing this? Why do you do that? So that whole conversation that you need to have with your audience, with those prospective customers, you can't script it.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. And I think that's a big reason why, you can't outsource it, because you have no idea if the people you're trying to outsource it to will ask even the remotely relevant questions. Because even you don't know going into it, like, what are the things that I should learn and what are the things that I should not care about?
Yeah. So in essence, if I'm hearing you right, essentially when you're building product market fit, it's always a bottom-up process. You can't start with generalizations. You really need to own in and understand deeply what some of the customers that you're after are looking for.
Definitely. And I would say that, you need to understand your customers on a level where they might not even understand themselves. Like they might do certain things and they just do it because of something, but they don't necessarily understand why they're doing it themselves. You have to understand, because that's what drives their behavior. And that is ultimately what's going to drive, whether you build something that is of value for them and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll buy this because this is the value that it brings me." So, it is really going deep, and going deep on any particular topic is really uncomfortable. Like, going deep within oneself is uncomfortable. Going deep and asking like painful questions, some of which your customers may not even want to answer and may not even answer truthfully, that's even more painful. So
if we talk about this concept of product market fit, I think it's one of those things that everybody knows is important. But when you drill down to it, what actually is product market fit, you get a lot of different types of answers, a lot of different understandings. So how would you describe the building blocks of product market fit in more detail?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, product market fit is this concept. Everybody wants to throw around this concept of product market fit, and startups like to say, "Oh, I've got product market fit." I'll declare to the world I've got product market fit. That doesn't really happen, by the way. What happens is that I think it's a combination of two things. First of all, again, there's two prerequisites in my mind to having even the opportunity to reach product market fit. One is learning and understanding from your customers, and the second thing is, well, what do you do with that? Once you learn that, hey, by the way, this is what these customers think, this is how they're acting, what do you do with that? How do you translate that into your product, your solution, whatever you're offering the customers? And it's about how do you adopt that learning? So those are kind of the two prerequisites. If you don't do those two things, and by the way, the faster the better. If you don't do those things quite rapidly, you don't stand a chance of reaching product market fit. But even if you do, there's no guarantee, because still, reaching product market fit still requires that, the problem that you are solving for the customers is actually meaningful. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can point to any number of companies, any number of industries, and I can point out, that there's 100 problems that those companies have. There's 100 problems that each individual consumer have if you're going for consumers. But we don't do a lot if anything, for most of those problems, we just let them be. Like in my own company, I can name 100 problems, but guess what? I don't care about 95 of them, and I probably never will. So if you're building something, it doesn't matter how great you are at adapting and learning, but if you're building something against those 95s that I'll never care about, I'll have a meeting with you, and I'll say, oh, this is really nice, but I won't buy it because it's just not a big enough pain and a big enough problem. So that's how I would kind of define it, right? So again, what you're doing when you're going after product market fit is like you are trying to learn and trying to build something that solves a big enough problem for a group and a defined group of customers. It's not for everybody. And that's another fallacy of product market fit. It's like, I have product market fit. Okay, well, you have product market fit, and you might have product market fit, but you have it for a particular segment or a particular group of customers. That's how it should be. You go after somebody else, you got to start over. You don't have product market fit for those guys. You only have it for these guys. And that's just the nature of building companies.
In talking about finding the product market fit and that journey, one of the things that you mentioned was that it really comes down to this acid test of, is the customer actually willing to buy if you build a certain feature. I used to have an entrepreneurship professor when I was doing my MBA back in the US, who always said that he never built a product that he hadn't sold prior to building it. So what are some of the keys in your mind? How can you get that level of customer commitment already before your product is out?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And there's no one right answer to that. But the way I sort of think about this is that, if you've really understood what your customers are saying and what gives value to them, like you can get them to sign up. Like you see this in a lot of services, a lot of products, like people queue up for stuff. I remember, and some of the listeners may remember there was a solution called Mint.com, which was acquired by Intuit, I think, and this is probably 15 years ago. There was later a Finnish version called Balansion, but I think Mint, which was a personal finance app, if I'm not mistaken, I think they had a wait list of 100,000 people signed up before they launched, before they had anything to give those 100,000 people. Like that's a sign of, okay, we've got people committed to coming in and to paying for it and so forth and so forth. And that it turned out to be a very successful business. I'm not successful for the VCs, but we can get into that. But there's multiple ways in which you can do that. And the ultimate thing is, of course, are they willing to put some amount of euros or dollars or however you're charging for your product on the line before they actually try something out? And I think that is ultimately at the core. I mean, there's other signals, right? So for example, when you ship your first product, it's probably going to look crappy. It's probably going to feel crappy. It's going to be, ugly, and it's only going to have limited amount of features and whatever. But if you're still able to get customers to sign up for it, where you kind of know, like, this is our MVP. I've got all this stuff in the backlog. I've got all this stuff that we should be doing, but customers are still paying for it. Like, yeah, forget about how much. I mean, that comes later, and pricing optimization, all that stuff doesn't matter. But I think those are kind of some of the ways you can tell. It's like, well, I'm really onto something here. So, and I think that's the difference between actually trying to and having to sell to somebody versus being able to have a conversation with somebody, with a customer, about the problems that they're experiencing, suggest a solution, and the customer go, yeah, where is it? I'll buy it right now.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
Yeah. Talking about that, so if we say we're talking about selling, or we're talking about learning and understanding the customer, when in that early stage you're on the journey of trying to understand the customer, how much of it is selling in your mind? How much of it is something else? So in other words, do you need to know how to sell in order to be able to understand your customer?
Well, I would say that you don't need to know how to sell, not in a traditional sense. Some people argue with me on that, but the point for me is, like, if you're saying, oh, I don't know how to sell, it's like, do you know how to have a conversation with somebody whose problem you're trying to solve, like that you got to be able to do. But if you're not able to do that, then why are you building for that target audience if you can't even have a conversation with them about the problems that you're trying to solve with your product, service, whatever it is? That is a conversation you need to be able to have. You need to be able to get into that conversation, but you don't need to be able to sell. Like, who cares about sales process and methodology and all that stuff, and salespeople and CRO on process and CRM? You don't need any of that stuff. Like, you really don't need any of that stuff early on. And this is also a fallacy. Some founders just think that, well, if only, I just have a sales problem. If only I had some really great salesperson who come in and sell this stuff. It's like, well, guess what? Find a mirror, look into that mirror. That is your startup's best salesperson. And that will be your startup's best salesperson this year, next year, when you're at 10 million of ARR, when you're at 20 million of ARR. That person you're looking into the mirror now as a founder, that's going to be the best salesperson in the company. So if you're not able to get customers to understand what problem you're solving for them, well, maybe you're not really solving a problem. And maybe that's the problem, not sales.
Yeah. There's an important message within that statement, essentially. I think we talked about in the previous episode with Risto that one of the most important reasons or the highest contributor to startup failure is premature scaling. And I think premature scaling is tied to product market fit as well. So trying to hire those salespeople and make it big before you've actually nailed down your product market fit. But when we talk about the product market fit, usually it's described as having some sort of attraction of customers coming to you and wanting what it is that you're providing them. Is there any way to quantify when you've actually reached product market fit and when you have enough traction to move to those next things?
So what I would say is that if you have time, let's say you reach product market fit and you have time to think, wow, and shout to the world, now we've reached product market fit. You most likely haven't, because there's something that happens. And again, product market fit, you've got it for this particular segment doesn't mean that you have it for this other segment, which means you can't just go from product market fit. Let's just scale and conquer the world. Like, that doesn't work. I mean, it works if you want to raise infinite amounts of capital and, get diluted out of your own company. But I'm hoping you don't want to do that. But what you see when you get product market fit is that you start getting customers coming to you, or if you're reaching customers outbound, you're getting so many of them to have conversations, so many of them to buy, that's what you're going to be focused on. So in hindsight, you can look at it like 6 months later, a year later, and say, yeah, that was probably the point when we really kind of had product market fit. But it's not this thing where you can kind of shout to the world, it's like, yes, we have product market fit. And just because you'll be too busy, because when you do have it, like, you'll have more important things to do than to go on LinkedIn or X or whatever startup conference and say, it's like, yes, we're now at product market fit and life is good. Because then you get a whole host of other issues. Like, you get a whole host of other problems you have to tackle, which are positive ones, because I think the way you kind of define this world, and I think Risto kind of looked at it like pre-product market fit, post-product market fit. The real big difference is that if you don't reach product market fit, you're dead. You will die. Whether it's a quick death or a slow and painful, agonizing death, you will still die. When you've reached product market fit, there are very few like isolated things that are going to kill you. Like, there are a lot of things that you need to do all of a sudden, and you can get a lot of things wrong, but there isn't like an isolated thing. There are very few isolated things that are going to kill you. There's a lot of things that'll slow you down. There's a lot of things that'll make you suboptimal. There's a lot of things that can make you depressed, but there isn't this one thing that's going to kill you.
And when then talking about building sales processes, hiring salespeople and so forth, just for sake of clarity, usually those things become relevant post product market fit.
Oh,
up
absolutely.
until that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And look, the pre-product market fit world, again, you've got one objective: reaching product market fit by learning and understanding your customers, adopting what they tell you and how they act into whatever you're offering to them. And then, doing that as quickly as possible with the least amount of capital as possible. So do you want to hire a sales team? Why would you? There's no point. I was listening to this podcast the other day, and they said that, you should hire a CRO pre-product market fit before you even have a product, because who else is going to go out there and, talk to those customers? Well, you're going to go out there as a founder. Like, honestly, getting a CRO to do that, this is not something you can outsource.
I think there's kind of this contrast that we're making in terms of saying that building a startup, it's a learning process, and it usually takes a lot longer than you think.
Always takes longer.
Yeah, and at the same time, you're trying to figure out that you need to get to this product market fit as quickly as possible so that you can start doing all these other things. So what are some of the ways that you can make the learning process and build up faster?
Well, I think the first thing is, like, you have to be curious. You have to be kind of open-minded. You have to want to understand. And I think, in getting to product market fit is kind of the binary most difficult thing. But I think, in a sense, before that, you really only have to learn about your customers, because nothing else matters. Culture doesn't matter. Your HR processes don't matter. Your CRM doesn't matter. Your marketing doesn't matter. Your brand doesn't matter. Just learning about your customers, like, that matters. Like, how good your website looks doesn't matter. The only thing that matters are your customers. Now, after product market fit, well, then you need to start learning about all the other stuff, because then you need to start learning about, well, how do I hire the right people? Like, how do I do I need a sales process? How do I put that together? Like, should I learn how to sell? Should I hire somebody to sell? How do we sort of set up the organization? Because before product market fit, you're not really building a company. Like, forget that. Like, if you think you're building a company, like, think again. Like, you're trying to figure out product market fit. That is not yet building a company. And once you do, you have a product that a group of customers wants to buy. Well, then you can start building a company. And there's a whole set of, like, other learnings that go with that. And so I think I do think that, as a founder, you have to make a very kind of clear distinction between those two, because it's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different sport.
Yeah. So just listening to that again, I think one of the important things to speed up your learning curve is to drown out all the noise.
Oh, yeah.
And just focus on what is essential.
Absolutely.
Forget about everything else. As long as you're focused on this, then you have a chance of getting there faster.
And I think this is something that happens in the startup world, because startups are, there's a good vibe around startups. Startups are cool. There's a lot of gatherings. There's a lot of events. There's a lot of people wanting to give you advice. So it's very easy to get distracted. Pre-product market fit. It's really easy to get distracted. Just go to all the startup events and dinners and network and meet other founders and have a great discussion about, I don't know, the state of AI in Europe versus US if you want to. But that's all a big distraction. The only thing that matters are your customers and learning about your customers. Why do they buy? Why do they not buy? Why do they behave the way they do?
Still talking about the speed of learning, can money help you learn faster?
No. No. I wish it was that easy. Let's just throw money at the problem. But I think, money has a funny way of making you think you can do a lot of stuff, a lot of irrelevant stuff. But I would almost say that, you don't want money in order to learn. Like, you don't need it. you need to have conversations with your customers. You don't need a big engineering team to build something complex. And, maybe you want a couple of engineers to, kind of adopt that learning into practice. So maybe you want some amount of money. But I would say the objective should be the less money that you can, spend on your kind of education of finding product market fit, the better it is. Just because we're human beings. Like if you give me a bunch of money, like I'll find very creative ways to use that. I mean, maybe if I throw a bunch of money at Google Ads, like maybe that's gonna, help me have more customer conversations, or that's what I can tell myself. But it's not true. So no, unfortunately, money doesn't help. I think it acts in the opposite direction.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, and I think. In our line of work, we oftentimes run into situations where we talk to founders who have been receiving a lot of guidance from different investors. And based on that, they are doing a lot of different things already in early stage. Why do you think that is? And why is our view so different from some of the other investors in the game?
So what I would say is I think that most advice investors give is wrong. And it's not categorically wrong, it's just wrongly timed. So, and there's an awful lot of like startup advice, there's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of like, articles, there's all sorts of different like channels for startup advice. VCs love giving advice. But the problem with that advice is that it comes without context. And in an early stage startup, context is everything. Like context is really, really everything, right? You can be doing the things that, are very relevant when you're a 100-person organization, but if you do them with a team of 5, you're just wasting time and you're wasting money. And I think that is the thing that no one ever really bothers to qualify with advice is like, who is this going to be relevant for? And when is it going to be relevant? They just say, hey, there's a great advice for you, like, build a great culture, build the best product. It's like, yeah. And again, unfortunately, it's also very difficult to kind of cut out that noise because you're usually getting advice from somebody who's more experienced than you. They've got a track record. They've done something amazing. So you look up to them and you're like, wow, taking advice from this person on this, like it seems like the smart thing to do because they've done it before. But that's not nearly always the case, unfortunately. And they don't mean bad, by the way. Mm-hmm. Like whoever is giving advice, like they genuinely want to help most of the time. So yeah, it's unfortunate. It happens.
You talked about the concept of culture earlier, and once again that pre-product market fit, you shouldn't be too focused on that. But when we talk about kind of this understanding of the journey of getting to product market fit and how do you get there, how do you as a founder get the rest of your small team on board with that and spread the understanding of what we need to do at this given moment?
Well, I think when you're really early, let's say like pre-product market fit, like you really don't need more than like 4 or 5 people, pre-product market fit as a whole. I don't think you should have to put too much of an effort on things like culture. If you find yourself thinking, well, how do I get these other people to like act in a way I want them to act? And, should I have a culture workshop or some other BS? It's like, you've just got the wrong people. Like, period, end of story. You just got the wrong people. Because I think really early on, like, you should surround yourself with people who, from an attitude perspective, they're kind of like you. You still can't outsource your learning to them. But if they see something that needs doing, they're just going to go and do it. Like, you don't need to build a culture for them to enable them to do something. They're just going to do it because, hey, guess what? Nobody's doing this. Well, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Right. And I think that is more of what you're kind of looking for in terms of the early team, which is a group of people who just have certain innate sort of characteristics. Like they can't resist themselves. They can't kind of like, well, that's not my job and it's over here. Like if they exhibit any piece of that, just get rid of them.
Yeah.
They're in the wrong place. I'm sorry.
No,
It's just true.
No. It makes perfect sense. I think at the same time, the question then begs is that when you're doing those first few hires, usually you would have 2 to 3 founders, not more. When you do the first external hire, what are some of the things that you pay attention to at that stage?
Well, I think again, the same things that you kind of want to do yourself. It's like, how quickly are they learning? Are they adapting? Like, what do they do? Like, just how do they sort of talk? And I remember there was an early hire that I made for my own company, and I can't remember if it was the first hire or whatever, but it was funny because one of the questions that I asked him, or maybe it was my co-founder who asked it, I can't remember, was, how do you think about our website? I mean, our website was crap back then and didn't need to be any better. But he said on the phone in the interview, it's like, yeah, I think it's crap. I made you guys a new version. I'll send it to you after the interview. We didn't ask him to even look at our website, but he had looked at it. He was like, oh, this is bad. And he had made a new version that he sent after the interview. Like, that's what you want, because what that demonstrates is somebody who just looks at something is like, okay, I understand what these guys are trying to do. This is all wrong. I don't like this. I'm just going to take the initiative. I'm not part of this company, by the way, and I'm not going into a role where, I would be doing anything with a website. But anyway, it sucks. So I'm just going to take my own time and the initiative to make a new version with whatever, Squarespace, Wix, whatever, one of these tools, and, show it to those guys and say, hey, by the way, here it is. It's like, that is what you want. Like, that is the type of attitude that you're kind of looking for. Like, somebody who's hungry, wants to learn, wants to understand, who's proactive, who gets shit done, right? Like, that's the kind of attitude that you're looking for. And there isn't a perfect interview question to ask that person, but I think, again, magic bullets and silver bullets are always nice. They're really great. It's like, there's one silver bullet and that was going to fix everything. But I do think, like, it's more about kind of the attitude towards things. It's almost like, oh yeah, by the way, I saw this thing and I did it, and here's the end result because I saw nobody was paying attention. And that's what you want.
Yeah.
So,
well, starting to pull all of this together, if we've kind of established that learning is critical for a startup success, but learning in vacuum doesn't mean anything. That the first thing you need to focus when you're on your learning path is understanding and finding your product market fit. So if those are the at the center of building an early stage company, what are some of the most important lessons that you've personally learned relating to those things?
Well, I think the most important lesson is probably just get out the door. Like, that learning does not happen when you're sitting in front of a computer looking at charts or looking at graphs or looking at website traffic. Whatever you want to kind of look at or whatever you want to deceive yourself matters. Get out the door. Like, get on a plane, get in your car, get next door, wherever your customers are, go and talk to them. Like, and I think that is the number one lesson. Like, there is no better way. And by the way, there's no better way by a mile to generate learning, if there is even another way, in period. But that's number one.
Let's move into our final questions that we ask all of our guests on the show, with the first one being, what do you know today that you wish you had known years ago?
What do I know today that I wish I would have known years ago? Oh, a lot of things. I mean, but if I had to go back, if I had to go back sort of 20 years, what I would probably tell myself is that it's gonna take longer than you can ever imagine. So plan accordingly, right? Like, just don't have any kind of time frame in mind, because honestly, you don't know. Whatever time frame you're gonna have in mind is gonna be wrong. So it's just gonna take time.
That's great insight, and actually in relation to that, in your journey, what do you think could have helped you to move faster on the learning curve?
Getting out the door quicker, like not being afraid to kind of pick up the phone and have actual conversations with prospective customers. Like, I think it took me way too long. And it didn't take me long, but it took me way too long to figure out that, that's something you got to do. That is the only way. Mm-hmm. There is no other way.
Very good. And then the final question to you. In our next episode, we're going to have Petri Lehmuskoski, our other founding partner at Gorilla Capital. So what would you like to ask Petri on the show?
Oh, there's a lot of things I want to ask Petri, but if I turn the table slightly, I would ask him, what is the biggest investing mistake that he's made, and why did it turn out to be a mistake?
Very good. Thank you very much, Sampo. That is a question I'll be happy to ask Petri.
I want to know the answer too.
And that concludes our show for today. We're putting new episodes out every 2 weeks on Wednesday mornings. Please stay tuned and tune in for the next one. Thank you very much.